Cyclones on the radar in Mauritius and Australia on tonight's Tropical Weather Bulletin. And now the latest around the wide world of tropics. Tropical Weather Bulletin for January 12th. Well, we've really stepped up a gear in our state of readiness. We're now code orange on TCOS, our tropical cyclones operations status, and that's for the southwest Indian Ocean, where it's looking increasingly likely that there will be cyclone impacts for the Mascarene Islands, Mauritius and La Réunion. The Atlantic though, first of all, 140 days until hurricane season begins. Looking across the area right now, there's a little bit of rain moving across the southeastern United States. Some winter weather further north and a significant extratropical cyclone over water near the Azores. In the Eastern Pacific, it's 123 days until hurricane season here, and it's generally quiet, with very little precipitation to speak of, certainly very little over land areas, apart from over the southern Rockies in the United States. Moving towards the Western Pacific, and it actually is quite bare here as well, a really glorious day for many across the Western Pacific there, with only light cloud and maybe low-level cloud over parts of interior China, Indochina, and obviously a lot over the Himalayas and northwards. Well then, looking towards the tropical zones, we have two areas of interest still in the Australian region and into the South Indian Ocean. 40% currently located in the Gulf of Carpentaria, a system that may be starting to initiate now, and a 60% to the west that's going to enter the Southwest Indian Ocean fairly soon. But the main one that we're looking at is this 80% chance now that we've got in the Southwest Indian Ocean, northeast of Madagascar, and its general track is going to take it towards Mauritius. Let's take a closer look at the area of interest. 166 kilometers south of Agalega, 501 from Tromelin, 762 from Antalaha in Madagascar, 901 from Mauritius, and 1010 from La Réunion. So a long way for it to travel, but it is still expected to get within the vicinity in about 3 days, maximum 4. As for its strength, it could become a very powerful cyclone, one that may give those islands a run for its money, and of course a big rainmaker looks like it's on tap. Satellite imagery across the western part of the Indian Ocean. On either side of the equator you can see the developing tropical disturbance then on the bottom side of that screen. That's the one that we're watching, and a little one on the northern side as well that's still persisting in the Arabian Sea. We haven't marked that one, but it is still a tropical disturbance worth looking at. Well, here is the main one that we're tracking today, the one in the southwest Indian Ocean. And the recent ASCAP pass only found 25 knot winds, that's 30 miles per hour, estimated pressure of 1003 millibars, and still quite far away from having a closed circulation, so nowhere near initiating it as a tropical depression or storm yet, but things are going to get better for it as time goes on. A little bit of microwave imagery there showing possible rotation. Here's the other one further east in the southeast Indian Ocean, you could say, in the Australian region just about, and moving slowly towards the southwest. This is a system that might take its time generating, but does look like it could become a tropical cyclone, and that's why we've got a 60% chance on that right now. As you can see, it's in no state to be called one at the moment, and it's still something that we're going to be watching for a while. The threat to the Cocos Islands is lessening there, but they could still get in excess of 100 millimeters of rain. Now, this system in the North Indian Ocean moved through the Maldives not long ago and is continuing on towards the west. It's actually looking a little bit better today, although signals are showing that it's probably not going to get any further. Sea surface temperatures in the Eastern Pacific continue to wind down as we head towards the annual low, which is usually in around February. In the Atlantic, the same story is true here as well, although still a lot of the Caribbean and Atlantic main development region is above the threshold. The Western Pacific is still very warm around Palau, 30 degrees plus, and in general still quite a bit of energy left in the Philippine Sea, and even further out as well to the east. North Indian Ocean, there's still a few spots looking good, especially where that invest was actually, but clearly it didn't take advantage of that. Bay of Bengal, still a few spots of 28 degrees. To the southwest Indian Ocean, things are looking very good here, as you'd expect, over 30 degrees Celsius for the next 2 or 3 days of this potential storm's track. Looking further east for the other area there, temperatures aren't quite as good, but they can still support a substantial tropical cyclone for a few days, depending on its track. Around the northern part of Australia, temperatures exceedingly good there, 32 degrees plus in the Gulf of Carpentaria where that system could form, and in the South Pacific where we're still watching for a potential second branch off from that first system in Australia into the Coral Sea. Temperatures still looking very good there as well, 30 degrees minimum in those lower latitudes. Well, the El Nino effect is still very present there in the eastern part of the Pacific as we look at the anomalies. Southwest Indian Ocean is also critically very much above average north of Mauritius and La Réunion. South of it, though, is well below average, so a real meeting point there between the anomalies. And in the western Pacific, it's generally just above. Around the Australian region, it's moderately above average. Oceanic heat content is still quite apparent in the Coral Sea, and a lot of it there in the low latitudes of the South Pacific, extending just about to Fiji, but especially through Vanuatu. Quite a fair little amount there near the Mariana Islands in the Western Pacific, and west of there, Eastern Pacific is just about giving up completely now after it had that little load there off the coast of Mexico for quite a while. GFS computer models then for the next 5 days looks like this, and we expect this storm will really start developing in the next 24 hours and become a tropical storm, and then rapidly intensifying at times. And now the GFS wants it to pass directly in between the two islands, but a little bit closer to Mauritius, delivering hurricane force winds to the island by the time we get towards the early part of next week. What date is that? The 15th of January. We're expecting that to occur, so thinking where we are right now, trying to remember my days, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday it would be for the closest pass. And here's the other system slowly moving towards the southwest, in fact maybe not even southwest for some of that, westerly, and eventually starting to develop a little bit further as it moves a little bit further on. Not much we can say about this system. It's very broad at first, and it will struggle for a good while to try and get itself established, but looks like it eventually will, and it is supported by multiple models. Look at the Gulf of Carpentaria, a quick spin up from the GFS, but it's not supported by many other models. That's why we're still sticking fairly low, 40%, but that could be conservative. Eventually that system does do a little bit of a loop-de-loop around the Gulf of Carpentaria, whilst we've got another system forming somewhere off its energy perhaps in the Coral Sea. We haven't marked that one yet because other models really aren't sure of it at all right now, but that air mass could end up moving on towards the Coral Sea and could end up striking New Caledonia next week. Looking at rainfall projections, we're having to show you two areas today because there are two areas of the world that are going to receive massive amounts of rain. Now, whilst the strongest winds will be in Mauritius if that GFS forecast plays out, the highest rainfall amounts will actually be on Réunion, and we're still looking at very high amounts of rainfall there, up to 24 inches, that's 600 millimeters, and near the center of the storm it will reach 30 inches, 750 millimeters, very close to those islands if this track forecast holds. Got to mention that it is still an uncertain track forecast as well, with some residual or incidental monsoonal rainfall also producing large amounts of rain in northern Madagascar as well, in excess of 600 millimeters. And in the Gulf of Carpentaria, we're looking at even higher amounts along the coast of Queensland from that area. And of course, as we know from Jasper and other not cyclones, but other features, that it has been an extremely wet period for this part of Queensland. Well, I'm afraid to say there's going to be a lot more where that came from. Look at this scenario, and because of all the disorganized ramblings from these storms right now, we could be looking at up to 40 inches of rainfall for part of that coast there in Queensland. That is 2,000 millimeters. extending right up the coast towards Waipa, 18 inches, and along the eastern coast near Cairns and Mackay, 21, not Mackay actually, that's further south, but round Cairns, maybe getting up towards 16 inches, which would be 400 millimeters, and a few locations further north getting a little bit higher than that as well. Into the longer range then, day 5 to 10. This is what it's looking like on the GFS right now. So that first cyclone gets much larger and eventually spins out into an extratropical low, and then the much smaller second cyclone follows in behind it from the eastern Indian Ocean. So there they go, they're like doing a little bit of a dance together there, one after the other, moving off down towards the much higher latitudes and dying off without, well, that second system without any incident. Coral Sea, there's that tropical cyclone striking New Caledonia as a significant tropical storm, but it does completely collapse when it does so and then moves on its remnants towards the southeast. The second system, of course, which forms first in the Gulf of Carpentaria, it's still hanging about there and mauling the coast and then moving inland and finally dissipates actually before it reaches the other side. So a whole lot going on in Australia, that has to be said. It's going to be very wet for some areas regardless of what happens, but I must stress that it is a low confidence forecast of any of that happening. Scan the barcode for the latest merch products from our Force 13 store, as well as our full season and individual storm animations, and are still waiting for Hone t-shirts. Well, in the silly range, this is things that you really can't take for granted at all, and it does form another tropical cyclone off the northwestern coast of Madagascar and eventually moves it on towards the coast of northernmost Mozambique, perhaps even towards the border with Tanzania, and moving towards the west becomes a mature tropical storm, maybe getting close to hurricane equivalent status as that second system from the southeast Indian Ocean winds down in those much higher latitudes down there. And in Australia, we're looking into the silly range here as well. Could there be another system? Well, the GFS thinks that that could be a possibility. There it is, spinning around along the western part of the continent, although it only lasts for a very short amount of time there. And then maybe a second system appearing near the end of that 16-day period, another one in the Gulf of Carpentaria, another small one, and looks like hopefully a much more sincere track starting southwards and then westwards, but that is way out there in the long range. But it looks like the pattern is very wet for the Australian region, just like it was on this day in 1988, where we had two storms active just off the coast of Australia, Aggie, which was over the islands of Papua New Guinea, and Anne, which was a powerful Category 4 storm coming off its peak near New Caledonia. But the main feature today was Typhoon Roy, probably due to its uncommonness, a January storm reaching Category 4 status. Yep, the West Pacific is definitely capable of that. We also had 8S, which was about to become another tropical storm down in the southwest Indian Ocean, so quite similar to today actually. Minus the West Pacific, of course. No storms have formed so far this year. Alvaro didn't quite count because it was just before the New Year gong. The Atlantic, the first name of this season, is Alberto, the Eastern Pacific, Aletta, and in the Central Pacific we are still waiting for Hone. In the Western Pacific, our next name is Awinyar. In the North Indian Ocean, it will be Remal. As mentioned, we are code orange, which means that live commentary is possible in the next 24 hours, as well as other updates on the storms in question. The Australian region, the next name is Kirrily, Southwest Indian Ocean, Bilal, and in the South Pacific, it will be Nat. That's all from tonight's Tropical Weather Bulletin. We'll be back again tomorrow night.